Good morning and welcome to the NBA Daily. Coming up, Nikola Jokić had a 61-point triple-double, and we're going to try to wrap our heads around it. And Steph Curry, he also went off. Anthony Slater's here to talk about the night. And we sat down with Amick to catch up on the latest with the Grizzlies and Ja Morant and wonder whether he's going to be moving on this summer. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, guys. Thanks for staying up, Anthony, and hanging out with us. We originally thought we were going to be talking about Steph Curry right off the top, but Nikola Jokić kind of bumped him from the front page here. A 61-point triple-double in a loss, actually. Crazy game. Anthony, you're actually in Memphis. You were there for the Warriors Grizzlies game, but you caught the last quarter, the double overtime of this game when the game kind of got absurd. What do you think, man? I mean, this was to me the game of the year. And you maybe didn't see the whole thing. I did, but how'd you feel about the finish of this game?
Yeah, it was great. A lot of shot making, big threes. Aaron Gordon was hitting big threes. Alexander Walker obviously returning. And then, the Westbrook thing's going to be like the headline probably tomorrow because they had it won. He could have, I guess, dribbled it out with 10 seconds left. Then they probably foul him with 8. I actually don't mind taking the layup. How'd he miss the layup? It was a really easy layup. And then I don't know why you're even getting close to, fouling Alexander Walker there. I mean, look, if he hits it, he hits it. You want some kind of a contest, but it was almost like a fake hustle late contest that put him in danger. And a combo blunder that will be the story. I mean, like Jokic's stat line. He ruined
the game for Jokić, I hate to say it. It literally is the story. He gets that. He makes a good defensive play, makes the right pass to Christian Braun, and blows the layup. And look, those things happen, but to double down and come back and to foul Nickeil Alexander-Walker when he's firing up a hot potato. I mean, this was a grenade.
Did y'all think it was a foul?
Yeah, I thought he got him on his arm.
I think it felt a little soft for that moment.
Yeah, that's fair. That's probably fair. Yeah,
it's kind of a tough one.
I think it's the Russell Westbrook experience, right? Like they're going to call that because it's Russ, because in those type of situations, he's prone to making that type of mistake. And I think that's part of the situation here with them. Like you saw the 10-second experience of what it is to have Russell Westbrook on your team. Incredible hustle, makes the hustle play, gets a good defensive stop, but then hustles too hard to blow the layup and then foul the guy on the other end. I mean, yes, that's going to be the storyline, but Nikola Jokić put up one of the best games I've ever seen in my life live. Yeah. It was incredible to watch him just surgically carve. He played the entire second half and overtime, put up 61 points, was just unstoppable. Didn't matter what kind of defensive coverage they threw at him, whether it was double teams, whether it was single coverage. It just didn't matter. Slater, I have to ask you, Jokić, in terms of like offensive weapons to face and try to tackle throughout a game, one of the best that you've ever seen? Yes? No? Maybe so?
Yes. I was also in person for the Steph tonight who would be in that category.
Right. Yeah.
And he had only the 5th ever 50, 10, 10, 5 tonight. Yeah. Which is funny because, like you said, it's a little overshadowed. What did Jokić was 61, and then what else?
Yeah, 61, 10 assists, 11 rebounds, a couple of steals. Yeah.
You mentioned it, and this is going to sound so hatery on his stat line, but how many minutes? He ended up playing like 50-something minutes.
He played 53 minutes,
bulk up your points a little in this like massive shootout and overtime where you played 36 straight minutes. Basically, his second half was most stars full game, right? Because you're talking about 24 minutes plus an extra 10, 34 minutes. Like, I think Steph averages 32. But I mean, yes. I mean, to your original point, yes, Nikola Jokić at this point is starting to get in that like all-time top 15 best center ever. Steve Kerr called him the best center ever.
He's close to it, man. Wow. And I don't think we need to really like couch it at all. If we just consider his peak, this 5-year run that he's on, it's if not the best ever, it's one of the 3 or 4 best ever. period. He's just every single season he has the best season of all time, for 5 years running. And at some point we will start to recognize that he's up there. He just needs rings at this point. He's got everything else. I don't want to let it get lost that the Wolves did win this game. And it was a game that they really needed to win. It puts them in a tie. Now Memphis has the tiebreaker, but they are now tied with Memphis for the 6 seed, 7 seed, whatever you want to call it, but right there on the bubble. Memphis did lose to the Warriors, which we'll talk about. But Anthony Edwards in this game, I mean, this was like playoff level performance. Anthony Edwards, 34 points, 10 rebounds, had 8 assists. But down the stretch, Anthony, you mentioned the shot making. That's what kept the Nuggets, at bay when they were trying to run away from the game. I mean, the Wolves just kept clawing back. Anthony Edwards kept hitting shots. And then when the time came, that's the reason they won the game. Anthony Edwards hit big shot after big shot.
No DiVincenzo, no Naz Reid because of suspension.
Yep.
No Rudy Gobert late because he fouled out.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean that's a huge win, and he celebrated it, didn't he? Right when Jokic did that.
Oh yeah.
By the way, how about the Jokic? There's 0.1 left, and
and he's still trying
the last free throw, and he was still trying to find a way to if I just
he's got 2 heaves, hit 2 heaves in this game, and he leads the league in heaves by a good margin. Yeah, I mean, just always trying to do something.
But yeah, no, you could tell how much Edwards wanted this one. I mean, there's probably the playoff history between these two is kind of anytime you go through a fierce 7-game series, there's just a little extra. Didn't Mike Malone have some quote this week that
they play them better?
His coaching staff had been watching film and it's they play us harder than they play anybody. This is big for Minnesota. I think if Minnesota loses this, they are the likeliest 8, which means that's the road play-in team. And with winning this, every result is swinging, massively right now. I mean, we're going to get, I assume, to this Warriors-Grizzlies game. And
we'll just go to it now.
Yeah, that was that is huge standings-wise. If the Warriors lose tonight, they're 1.5 games behind the Grizzlies. And the Grizzlies, it would be 2-2 head-to-head, but the Grizzlies have a better conference record, so pretty likely the Grizzlies would have the tiebreaker. Instead, the Warriors win. They're a half game ahead of the Grizzlies, and they clinch the tiebreaker. We're talking about do the math for me there, but that's a 3-4 game type swing.
Yeah.
I was talking to Warriors people pregame and even at shoot around, and I'm the more realistic, clear-eyed people within the Warriors, and their thought was win tonight in Memphis. Very likely you're avoiding the play-in. They now have a really clear path to be the 5 or the 6. If they had lost tonight, it would have been really hard for them to avoid because they think the Clippers are probably going to win a lot of games. They have the tiebreaker. Grizzlies would have. Yeah. So that's what felt like was on the line. April 1st in Memphis was playing or not playing. Warriors win, and I think they've got a good chance here to avoid it.
Where do you rank this Steph Curry game? Of the Steph Curry games that you've seen,
season or this, or
let's say this season, because his career,
you've covered him for a long time.
It's somebody asked Draymond this, a local Memphis reporter, is this the best Steph Curry game you've ever seen? He was like, hell no,
no.
I don't know, 24th maybe. Of all time.
Did you have any kind of inkling that something like this was happening? I had this idea in my head that I would ask you. Do you ever see him do something different? But the truth is, it's just he was more aggressive in this game.
He had a really focused shoot around. I got here. They had projected they were going to be open at 10:45, 11 a.m. basically at the arena. Y'all talked to me last night, late night in Oklahoma City. I took a really early flight to make sure I made shoot around for a few reasons. But I got there when they projected to be open, and they didn't open for another 30 minutes, which told me, man, this is a heavy game plan shoot around, more than usual. And then once it did open, to me, he went through a full pregame shooting routine at 11 a.m., 11:30 a.m., whatever. And they mentioned it, I didn't even say anything about it. And Draymond mentioned it postgame that he could see Steph's focus in shoot around, and Steph said he shot it really well in shoot around. And for him to mention it, I think he did. He had a week off recently because of that tailbone injury. Yeah. I think that refreshed the body and mind a little bit. Apparently he played golf on this road trip twice, including yesterday. Although, now I'm talking to you past midnight 2 days ago. in San Antonio at like, the La Cantera Resort or something out there. And for whatever reason, like that really gets him going. They always worry so they fills up, everyone has to fill up their cup their own way. Well, Steph plays golf.
Right.
He was juiced up for this game. You could tell early, to your point, really aggressive. 19 in the first quarter. End of the first quarter, he had like 19, 5, 4, and 2 steals.
Yep.
In 10 minutes. 32 at half. What was funny about his game is he hits his 11-3 with like 4 minutes left in the third.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a close game, right? They're not defending that well. Ja's killing him. And Steph has like every 3-point record imaginable except for single game.
Mm-hmm.
One. He was there. His teammate did it. Broke Steph's record. Clay has it. 14. He wants it. Steph wants that record. And he admitted to me post-game, like, because I had the same thought. He hit the 3 with 11, or with there's 16 minutes left in the game. He's already at 11.
He's going to go for it.
This could be the night. Mm-hmm. And he admitted he started the fourth. I don't know if y'all remember. He had 2 really bad threes. Yes. He was even doing one of his, like, pointing at himself at the bench, like, oh, my bad on that one.
Yeah.
And he had to rein himself back in because he was like, okay. He was thirsty for it, but he's like, you know what's more important than that record? The 5th seed.
It was a little bit like the 4,000th 3. Remember when he kind of went through that a little bit?
He was hunting for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, really? When the month before the Ray Allen record a few years ago, he was like hit a deep slump because he was just too antsy about it.
Just trying too hard. So this was your first chance to see the Grizzlies up close. Obviously, they, a lot of changes there, change in head coach, new offensive system this season. First chance to see them since they changed head coaches. You notice anything different about them at this point in the season? I mean, to me, when I watch them, they just seem like they don't have the legs. I don't know if you saw that up close.
They were just really bad defensively, and I'm used to them being really good defensively. There's a reason Steph had 52. Like, they were trying some of their like top blocking and various stuff with like Jalen Wells, Scottie Pippen, whatever. They just were making a bunch of errors defensively.
I mean, it's a rookie guarding Steph Curry is part of the problem, right?
The relocation stuff or, leaving them at bad times. Aldama was turning his head and Steph's running behind. It's like clearly their game plan was very Steph Curry oriented, like it always has been. But 2 things defensively. The personnel is not very good. It's like Zach Edey and Luke Kennard guarding pick and rolls. And, like you said, a rookie is their primary perimeter guy. Ja has his issues. And then Jaren Jackson, who's obviously great defensively, Draymond like roasted him post game. No, I shouldn't say that. Draymond did not roast him post game. Draymond is really friendly with Jaren Jackson. They have Michigan State connection, and he was critical in a big brother way about it. Where I would agree with Jaren Jackson, it's just the silly fouls. 2 in the first quarter. He's just running over Moses
handful
Moody
of jersey half the time on rebounds. That
changed the first quarter. They're up 1. He gets his second foul, goes to the bench. It's Warriors go on a run. And then you mentioned the one that Draymond apparently went over to Desmond Bane during the game when it happened was basically like, dude, you got to tell your guy here, what's he doing? He misses a 3 and he's frustrated, and Quentin Postage is going for a rebound. He just grabs his arm and yanks it. It's his 5th foul. And then Jimmy Butler pump fakes him with 2 minutes left, gets the 6th foul. Which Kerr called the biggest play of the game. So you asked me what I meant. That's what I see with the Grizzlies. They're really bad defensively right now.
This was a really good Jimmy Butler game, too. I thought really just the way that he was working in 2-man actions with him and Steph, and then the Draymond connection, like those 3 in clutch were just able to get constantly good looks. Like they got a Moody 3 off of it, which was awesome. The Pajimski offensive rebound was big. Like it feels like things are coming together for the Warriors at the right time. And now they have that potential Lakers-Warriors game on Thursday, potential playoff preview between the 4 or 5 matchup. 4 or 5 matchup. We'll see what happens.
28 of 28 from the line tonight, 12 of 12 for Butler.
Yeah.
That's huge. That's what they weren't doing. That's first of all, they don't get.
They
to
never
the
got to the free throw line in the first place. Yeah,
and they were for a large part of the season. They were the worst free throw shooting team in the league, despite having Steph Curry. As far as percentage, that's no longer the case. So Thursday night, Warriors Lakers marquee game. It's the 14th day of a 14-day trip for the Warriors, 2-week cross country. Then they go home Friday night, and it's Jokic Curry in Chase Center. If Steph plays, because that's an absurd back-to-back coming off a 2 game.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to try to get you in here for as many of these as we can.
Yeah, you're going to be back with us this week,
Thursday, talk to y'all Friday.
Appreciate
What's the big game tomorrow night? I'll try to catch
I haven't even looked. We're a day at a time.
Come for Pistons Thunder, huh? Yeah, that's
go back to OKC. No, yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
All right, thanks for hanging out with us, guys. Stick around after the break. S and I sat down with Sam and we talked about Ja and the Grizzlies. The Memphis Grizzlies are in a bit of a free fall, obviously firing head coach Taylor Jenkins. But there's more on the horizon. So to break that down, we had to talk to our national NBA insider, Sam Amick. Sam, what's the latest with Ja and the Grizzlies? I mean, are we looking at a De'Aaron Fox 2.0 here in Memphis?
Hello, Dave and S. Appreciate you guys having me. We shall see. I have been dropping that comparison a little bit these past couple of days. I don't know that the Grizzlies fans will enjoy that one, and maybe I'll be wrong because we all know how things finished up with Fox. But the parallel to me, it's imperfect, but I do think it's worth drawing, is that, in Sacramento, you had a guy in Fox who over the course of time became increasingly uncomfortable with the direction of the franchise, with the way things were unfolding on the floor. Now, the other parallel, Mike Brown gets fired. That's a guy that De'Aaron Fox rocked with until the end. Taylor Jenkins gets fired. That's a guy that, based on our information, that Ja Morant rocked with until the end. Now, the X's and O's stuff that you guys are well versed in is that, Taylor is a guy who, to simplify it, played more the way that Ja has preferred over the years. Now, when the Grizzlies, after firing Taylor Jenkins, elevate a guy in Tuomas Iisalo, the Finnish coach who they went out and got last summer, paid a 7-figure salary to, at the time, I don't know that a lot of us, certainly not in the national media, really picked up on the breadcrumbs along the way that showed that, not only was Taylor in trouble, but that Tuomas was a guy that the organization and GM Zach Kleiman specifically really wanted to take a look at, because he looks at offense in an entirely different way. His Paris basket team had done some innovative things internationally that got the attention of the Grizzlies GM. He wanted to integrate that into what Memphis was doing, but it wasn't working with, the kind of vision that he had. And now they make this move. The part where I wonder where things are headed with Ja is that this is just not really sat well with him in terms of the way he wants to play the game. Yeah. He's saying all the right things for now. The organization, to be clear, has been full-throated in their denial that he is going to be available anytime soon. A couple weeks ago, it was speculated in the media that they would start listening potentially this summer to Ja Morant trade offers. Not even a hard media report, more of just kind of chatter. And Zach went out of his way to refute that and said basically that opposing teams could keep dreaming and that wasn't going to happen. But I will say this, it's one of those situations where the noise always starts from the outside and sometimes it dissipates because a team gets back on track and the thing it has going, if that makes sense, is, good enough that the star player gets comfortable again. But a lot of times it continues to develop like it did with the Fox situation and the guy ends up leaving town.
Yeah, it's funny how that snowball effect happens, right, Dave? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, before we go into the next phase of this, I do want to say, there was a lot made, especially recently, in other places in the media about how Ja Morant's role has changed. I mean, you started seeing people talking about it on ESPN, and it made me start thinking, Sam, that okay, well, there's a little bit of a PR campaign happening here, and now. My assumption is always it comes from the player side, right? Like, hey, the player's not happy with how this is working out. Did you get any indication outside of just, hey, Ja wants more touches, that he was just unhappy with how things were? I mean, was it all on the court and particularly about the way he's being used?
No, I haven't. I have not been given any indication about fireworks of any kind off the court that go beyond basketball. I mean, we know how challenging the last couple of years have been, when it comes to Ja and the different kind of missteps that he has made. And to be honest, he should probably, and I imagine probably does feel thankful that the organization has certainly stood by him all the way through. And he's a guy that has been trying to just kind of get back to, not to quote LeBron, but to making the main thing. Right. And, this was basketball. This was a guy who has seen his star dim. You know what I mean? He was not too long ago, essentially kind of given that unofficial title of, rising American star, the guy who was going to take the mantle from the LeBrons and the Stephs potentially, right there with, Zion Williamson, who also has had his own kind of obstacles. He's just his arc has gone in the wrong direction. And whenever that happens with a guy like that, who is so talented and who is still very young and on the early side of his prime, he's going to obviously constantly assess the situation.
Yeah, I think, man, for Ja's perspective, staying on the floor is going to be a huge part of this next bit. Like, being able to be available is half of the problem here when it comes to being able to play the basketball you want to play. I wanted to ask you about, Zach Kleiman post firing Taylor Jenkins talked about the urgency and having that level of urgency to what they wanted to do decision making wise. Making this decision of firing Taylor Jenkins or parting ways at this juncture feels urgent. And I guess the question I think a lot of people are wondering is, why now? Why not 10 games from now when they're out of the playoffs? Why not even last summer? Why make this decision now?
I think, that it speaks to Zach's continued belief in the roster. Now, I will qualify that by saying, that is typically the sequence of events when things aren't going well. Like the GM is the guy who put together the roster, is probably going to have losing belief in the roster be the last move that he makes, because then he's got to look himself in the mirror. And that's not to disparage Zach at all. That's just kind of the historical context. And the idea that you have a guy in Tuomas who, again, was challenging to get into your program. You were excited about what he would bring to the table. You weren't seeing it to your liking, and the clock is ticking. And then post All-Star break, the Grizzlies were, I believe, 35-16 as of February 8th. They start losing games at a pretty high rate after that. They were 11-20 against teams that were above 500. Coincidentally, that last OKC one-sided loss that ended up costing Taylor his job, or at least his last game, it was on the front end of that streak going back to February 8th. They got boat raced by the Thunder at the start of that stretch as well. So the theme was that Zach, understandably, was looking at this going, we are not true contenders. And so try something different. But again, the backdrop that is worth unpacking even more deeply is that, once, and this is across the league, once an organization has somebody in-house that, that is aspirational and who has, a clean slate and who doesn't have any baggage, then, the clock is ticking, I think, for the incumbent head coach. And that's, again, where you can maybe draw a parallel to the Sacramento situation. Although, like with the Kings and Doug Christie, that was more ownership driven, the aspiration to get Doug in that spot when he was on Mike Brown's staff. But, to me, now that you look back at it a little more clear eyed, Taylor was in a spot all year long. And the only way to not get fired here was to be damn near the top of the West.
Right. I mean, I essentially felt like if they didn't win a first round series, he was probably going to be out this summer. I think that was the prevailing thought. And you don't make changes to a coaching staff like they did last summer without, a coach probably being on the hot seat. I want to look ahead to this summer. Obviously, they're going to be hiring a coach. Is this Tuomas's job to lose, or does he have to go and win it here, in the final few games? I mean, it hasn't gone well since he's taken over, but that makes sense. He hasn't had any time to really make any changes. Does he have to win the job here the rest of the season?
So this is me reading the room, just to be clear, not intel coming from the Grizzlies. Just in my experience, again, given what we know of the context of bringing him to Memphis and what he represented, I would be pretty surprised if he was not the coach next season. That's just me talking. Because it feels like a vision. It feels like a philosophical shift, and and one that I have a hard time thinking they're only going to commit to for 10 games. On top of that, when you give the guy a 7-figure multi-year contract as an assistant coach, that does not typically portend a short-term relationship. We don't have all of the coaching info around the league, but as you guys know, that's a pretty steep salary for an assistant of any kind. And the length of the contract. And
he's got an impeccable resume, and he has flown up. I mean, the coaching ranks. He was a player for a long time. I mean, this guy has got a lifetime of basketball experience. So I'm excited to see what he brings to the table for them, potentially as a head coach. It's nice to have new blood in the NBA, in my opinion. You get to see new things. Sam Amick, thank you for keeping us informed and abreast of everything that's happening around the league, as always. That's going to do it for today's show, folks. For Sam and for Anthony Slater and S. Baraheni, I'm Dave DuFour, and this has been the NBA Daily. Thanks for waking up with us.